I want to thank GLSEN for this truly meaningful award. Your mission and your passion are so specific and so very important. And thank you, Lily and Ari. It reassures me, I got to talk to Ari outside, to see a wonderful stand-up-for-something girl like you, Ari, when we have perhaps too many girls who now tweet things like, I am obsessed with those little colored sprinkles on cupcakes. Thank you, Ari, for not tweeting that. And thank you, Lily, for your blazing genius and beautiful shoulders that all Hollywood women are now standing on. Isn't she incredible, really? It's absurd that she's up here introducing me. I mean, it's ridiculous. I worship her. And thank you to all the freeloaders at my $10,000 table tonight. All of you who had no excuse not to be here because it was free. By the way, I'm a little under the weather, so I apologize for this voice. To Mary Kay Place, my shamelessly talented forever friend. Without your tenacious spirit and encouragement, I probably wouldn't have even been a writer. To Alan Crow, who began as my assistant and is now a producer of Bridegroom. You know that life without you just wouldn't be possible. I want to thank my agents, Steve Tejas and Jim Stein, who instead of telling me how much they love me, actually read my scripts and call me back. Thank you. To my husband, Harry Thomason, I don't want to make this any longer. I'll just thank you in the car on the way home. Don't worry, it won't be anything formal. And finally, Dr. Jeff Galpin, I am so deeply honored by your presence here tonight. In 1986, Dr. Galpin treated my mother for transfused AIDS, which she contracted during heart surgery. She ended up on a hospital floor with 17 mostly young gay men. This was a period when bigotry, hatred, and ignorance concerning the AIDS virus were all around. The medical staff and nurses treated all of us like pariahs. They were openly hostile, often refusing to touch patients. They placed medicine in rubber buckets routinely and kicked it into the rooms. And when my beautiful mother passed away, I could not even find a funeral home that was willing to take her body. Never before had I experienced such a feeling of profound rejection and hopelessness of being vilified and shunned. It was eye-opening. I thought to myself, so this must sort of be what it feels like to be gay. Then one day I heard a woman in the hallway say, well, if you ask me, this disease has one thing going for it, it's killing all the right people. And that just made me so angry. You just saw the clip. I immediately wrote a script by the same title, where Dixie Carter told her off. My dear friend Dixie, a lifelong conservative Republican, said to me, just give me the words and I will take her down. But the real hero in all this is Dr. Galpin, who spent a good part of his childhood fighting polio and an iron lung, no doubt informing his colossal character and humanity. Over the years, Jeff's compassion and pioneering treatment of thousands of gay patients has gone unheralded. In 1986, he was our sole angel. Our hope rose with the sound of his crutches coming down the hallway late at night. Many of those young men died in their rooms without family or friends, with a game show blaring on the TV and only Dr. Jeff Galpin to hold their hand. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you for being the forerunner of organizations like GLSEN, for insisting that every gay patient in your care be nurtured and respected. It just takes one person, one big idea, one organization to effect monumental change. I won't ask you to stand up because I know it's hard for you, but truthfully, Jeff, you already have. In my own life, that big ideal person was my father. As Lily told you, I grew up in a small southern town. My grandfather was a lawyer and civil rights activist. Don't worry, I'm not going to show baby pictures. This will evolve. He was a lawyer and civil rights activist who was eventually shot by the Ku Klux Klan for championing black defendants, allowing them to stay in his home at night. He survived the attack, and his 4 sons grew up guarding him wherever he went. They put themselves through law school by playing poker. One of them, my father, became a Japanese war crimes prosecutor. He taught me about being merciful in victory when he worried for years over the Japanese general he had caused to be executed. My uncle, a judge advocate at Nuremberg, came home with one of only 3 handwritten copies of the Nuremberg trials. It's now at the University of Missouri, but it stayed in our den for years. And when I was old enough, I learned about that too. My father was like Atticus Finch with liquor. And just like Scout, I rode my bike to the courthouse and sat enthralled in the back row while he defended murderers and thieves, who he assured me had a right to a fair trial. When I was in the 1st grade, he drove me to the municipal swimming pool on a Tuesday when only black children were allowed to swim. He pointed to it and he said, "You see that over there, Nelson?" That was my nickname. He said, "That's called Colored Day. And just so you know, that's wrong." That may not sound like a lot to some of you here tonight. We weren't heroes. We didn't march in Selma. But for a little girl growing up in a small southern town, that was a lot to know. We weren't allowed to join the country club because Jews and blacks couldn't belong. Well, actually, my mother also told me later that it was also because my dad didn't want to pay the dues. But nevertheless, we weren't allowed to join. I didn't know it then, but my father was passing along the DNA of our family, a legacy of love and tolerance. The same thing I see GLSEN doing today. And like GLSEN's mission to build a positive sense of self in children, he gave me a canoe and a paddle when I was only 6 years old, pointed to the spring-fed river we grew up on and told me it was my personal river and that I could out-paddle any boy on it. I cannot tell you how many challenging experiences there have been in my life in which I have channeled that small canoe and paddle. All the men in my family were raconteurs. They stood on my mother's silk ottomans and argued about literature, the law, the Bible. They could quote miles from Thackeray, Shakespeare, Tennyson. Lily told you about my scholarship company. It was for them that I started a reading program challenging the kids in my hometown to read the 100 greatest books ever written by graduation. So far, 68 have done so. And like GLSEN and their mission to educate, we purposefully include books which promote compassion, understanding, and tolerance. Novels like Of Mice and Men and To Kill a Mockingbird, which one kid actually thought was a how-to manual. And we now have over 245 mentors in my little town who trained to be experts on these books. These are the adults, getting accredited by the English teachers in our town before helping students understand the novel they are reading. It has engendered a tremendous bond between adults and children, along with being a huge source of pride. For example, a woman who works at JCPenney who never finished high school has now become our town's resident expert on Moby Dick. And every kid who reads Moby Dick has to call on her and meet with her. I myself saw how well things were going when I pulled into a gas station on my last visit home and heard one of the attendants say to the other, and I swear to God it's true, "Hey Virgil, how'd you like that Pride and Prejudice? I told you it's gonna be good, didn't I?" Again, it just takes a single person, one big idea, one organization to change the entire character and evolution of a single human being. I've seen this happen over and over. I'm going to finish with a Rush Limbaugh story because I feel it's slightly appropriate. I've told you about my family, but just 60 miles away in another town was another family law firm that was channeling a different kind of philosophical DNA. They were known as the Limbaugh brothers, and they would occasionally meet my father and uncles in court, with the Bloodworth boys, I'm happy to say, always coming out on top. But before my last uncle died, who was the consummate gentleman, he confided to me on his deathbed that on one of these occasions, Mr. Limbaugh had actually wept on the courthouse lawn. Anyway, their progeny, a boy named Rush, grew up to be, well, Rush Limbaugh, the famous radio host. And I, carrying the torch for my family, traveled to the world of politics and entertainment. Over the years, Rush and I cast a jaundiced eye toward each other, with Rush growing incrementally nasty in his rhetoric about my friends, the Clintons, and even Chelsea. I managed to hold my tongue. But finally, it all came to a head in 1992, when he, a Limbaugh son, became the last person to stay in the Lincoln bedroom on the last night of the senior Bush presidency. And I, the Bloodworth daughter, became the first person to stay there the next night. The first night of the Clinton administration. After the inauguration, we excitedly explored the White House. We found George Bush's he had a great bottle of vodka and some old crackers, and that's all we could find, so everybody shared it. And then my husband and I made our wide-eyed way to the Lincoln bedroom. It was so new to all of us. Lo and behold, there was a note there waiting for me. A note.
Sure.
I'm not sure I should say this. Anyway, lo and behold, there was a note there waiting for me. And you know, now that I had heard all the rotten things Rush had said about my friends, it was a note that seemed particularly, can't even say that word tonight, I don't drink, that seemed particularly giddy and smug. It read, "Dear Linda, ha ha, I was here first." And I knew I could no longer keep my secret. I picked up a pen and immediately wrote back, "Yeah, that's true, but it's okay, because my daddy made your daddy cry." Thank you so much. I'm going to treasure this.